This is WICR.
Welcome back, people, for our second and final segment of the day. The Rock is on. We got a quick show today, and we are making the transition from basketball to college basketball to baseball, and we're going to talk about the Mets. Now, look, we all know what the Mets accomplished last year. Making their improbable run to the World Series, or going from, being a borderline playoff team to a World Series contender in a span of 2 months. We get it. We know the whole saga of the season. Their hitting was inept. They couldn't hit the side of a barn. They were lucky enough to score 3-4 runs, and they had difficulty manufacturing runs throughout the first 2/3 of the season. And then you had the whole Wilmer Flores incident late in July against the San Diego Padres, where he thought he was going to get traded, where he thought he was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, him and Zach Wheeler along with for in exchange for Carlos Gomez. And it was just complete in the clubhouse. Excuse me, was in just complete disarray. Nobody knew what was going on. Terry Collins was clueless. He had no idea what was going on. You know, everyone thought he should have kept him. He should have took him out of the game. You know, Terry Collins said, until I am informed that he's traded, that I'll take him out. But until then, I'm still trying to win the game. And then the whole trade just subsided. And then the day after was probably the worst loss, other than losing the Game 5 of the World Series that year, was when the Mets blew a 6-run lead to the San Diego Padres, and Jerry's Familiar gave up the go-ahead home run to Justin Upton. And it was some bleak time. And during that time period, it was a bleak time for the Mets. It was a dark, bleak time for the Mets. And then, of course, a day later, on the trade deadline, right before the trade deadline, the Mets acquired Yoenis Cespedes from the Detroit Tigers, and then that just catapulted them into the playoffs. But with the success the Mets have from last year, there's one question that remains. There's one thing that I'm wondering about the Mets. Can they handle going from or make the can they handle from or make the adjustment of being the hunters? Can they make the adjustment from being the hunters to being the hunted? Because with being, granted, they didn't win the World Series, but they're the National League champions. And the other 14 teams in the NL are trying to beat them, and take that spot of the National League crown. So can the Mets mentally handle that pressure of going from trying to make it to the World Series to defending their crown, defending that position? Because you gotta go down the list. There's a lot of teams. Granted, there's some teams that are in the rebuilding stage that you don't have to worry about, but then there's some teams that were on the cusp, or that were in the playoffs. There you have some teams that were on the cusp of making the playoffs, but fell a little short. They got better, and then you had teams that were already in the playoffs. They made some moves to improve themselves and to get better. It's like we go down the list. The Cubs got better. They acquired Adam Warren, and they got a position player named Brendan Ryan in exchange for Sterling Castro with the New York Yankees. So the Cubs and that asset improved their bullpen. And then they made a big splash also with acquiring Jason Hayward, signing him to an 8-year, $156 million deal. And so their lineup got extremely better. And they still have the returning players. Guys like Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber, Dexter Fowler. Oh, and I forgot to mention even though this guy seems a little past his prime, he's still a dominant postseason pitcher, John Lackey. But still, the Cubs, they got most of their position players coming back, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And then you got the Cardinals, who no matter who have a great system, who have a great organization and a great system, and they have a certain philosophy from the single A team to the major league team. You know, they can just the Cardinals. I'll get onto the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they're just notorious, and they have a habit of just plugging any guy in and having that next man up mentality. Kind of it's kind of an analogous of the New England Patriots. When one guy goes down, they'll just put somebody in, or if a guy leaves via free agency, they'll just sign somebody, for a cheaper price, and they'll do just as fine. And that's what the Cardinals are, in that sense. So they're gonna be a tough out, and they're gonna be competitive, and they're always gonna be in the playoff mix every single year. So you got the Cardinals to worry about. Then you're gonna have the Giants, who granted, yes, they didn't make the playoffs last year, but they got better. They added Johnny Cueto, and they still have Posey, and they still have Hunter Pence. Those two guys. They don't have Sandoval because he went to the Red Sox, not this offseason, but the offseason before. So like to see, but they got Matt Duffy though, so he's a great replacement for them. So the Giants are gonna be back in, and plus they have this thing where they win the World Series every other year. So this year it's an even year, 2016. So maybe some people are declaring them World Series champions already, but that has yet to be determined. But the Giants, they're well managed. They have one of the best managers in the game in Bruce Bochy. So you can't put it past them. I think now going to the Pirates, we'll start with the Pirates. Now we know with the Pirates, they've been in the playoffs for 3 consecutive seasons. They've made the playoffs 3 consecutive seasons under manager Clint Hurdle. But I think the Pirates and the Dodgers, who were playoff teams last year, they're going to take a step back because they lost some key pieces. The Pirates, they lost Pedro Alvarez. They lost AJ Burnett. Two. And also Neil Walker as well, who went to the Mets via free agency. So I think the Pirates will step back. And the Dodgers, they fired Don Mattingly, they hired Dave Roberts, and they lost Zach Greinke and to the Diamondbacks via free agency. So I think, and who knows what's the story going on with Puig, what they're going to do with him because due to his off the field issues in years past, and his ability to stay healthy. So we'll see what happens there. But the Mets, they gotta understand, every team is gonna be after them now. Now, can Terry Collins, get his team focused? Make them mentally tough, saying, "Hey, we're the big dogs now. Everyone's trying to beat us. Everyone's trying to knock us out." When somebody attacks us or somebody's trying to beat us, how are we gonna retaliate? Can he make those guys mentally tough? Due to their success last year and what their success last year puts them in the position now. Can Terry Collins do that? That has to be determined. Because Terry, as a Met fan, you question Terry, you question his decisions or what he makes. Whether he left a guy too in, or if he leaves a guy too early, he pulls a guy too early, or he uses relievers too much, stuff like that. But he gets his fair share of criticism. But let's see. I want to see what he does this year with the Mets, and how he handles the amount of pressure of winning a world title, of being the top dog. How does he handle that? How do the players handle that? How do guys like Lucas Duda, or say Wilmer Flores or Travis d'Arnaud handle that? I don't want to say Wright because Wright had prior to last year. David Wright did have that postseason experience. Back in 2006, Curtis Granderson had some postseason experience with the Yankees and the Tigers in his career. And then Cespedes too. With the A's during his short tenure with the A's. But I want to see how these players, how the Mets as a team can handle the pressure of being the top dogs in the National League and having every team in the NL trying to beat them and knock them off the position of defending NL champions. And that concludes our first segment. That concludes our segment of today. I'm your host, The Rock. Follow me on Twitter, the underscore rock 954, and on Instagram, the underscore rock 1995. Have a great day, everyone.